The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 106, recorded on Friday, November 17th, from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
On today's episode, we discuss how the anti-woke movement is a gateway drug to the far right and Christian nationalism. But first, the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
So, Jason, I wanted to start off this episode talking about the Israel-Hamas war. And I know we talked about it before, but I think it's worth just discussing again about what's been happening since then, any updates at all. So,
has Israel started bombing Qatar yet, where the Hamas leaders actually are?
No, not
yet. Okay, still just bombing innocent civilians in Gaza.
Okay. Basically. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, is that obviously this is what liberal progressives have been shouting from the very beginning, and I know we talked about that in our episode when we were talking about the war, is the response from Israel is awful. It's been absolutely atrocious, and we can discuss, I mean, I think to be honest, it's semantics, but we can discuss whether that's like actually genocide or an apartheid or anything like that, but it's bad.
I do think it's funny that you have all of these people criticizing Joe Biden specifically, like you were going to get any other response from any other president. Think of anyone else who would have been president. Even Bernie Sanders is backing Joe Biden on this.
Right.
And like we said originally when we had this story, it's because the U.S. does exactly the same thing. If you're stupefied with how Joe Biden is handling this, you really need to come to grips with what the United States does as well in the same type of situation. Because it happened not that long ago. We just got out of Afghanistan after 20 years.
Right.
And we should have shown Israel that this doesn't work, because we occupied Afghanistan for 20 years, propped up a puppet government that was super weak, and as soon as we left, the Taliban came back in and took over, and that's exactly what's going to happen here.
Well, and that's the problem, is that they know that, and I mean, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but Netanyahu's far-right advisors are going insane with, they just want to nuke the whole thing, which is...
It's still not, again, like I said, the Hamas leaders are in Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, doing TV broadcasts.
Right.
And there's a lot of sympathy for Palestinians and people that are going to pick up that fight, even if they wipe out every single man, woman, and child in Gaza. That's not going to be the end of it. I'm sorry. It's not going to accomplish anything. It's just going to intensify the hatred and the guerrilla warfare tactics against Israel.
So let's talk about some of the numbers since we last talked about it. The death toll has been very asymmetric on this side after the obviously horrible thing that happened on October 7th in Israel, where they had over 1,200 deaths because of that whole thing. Since then, though, over 12,000 Palestinians have died, 30,000 have been injured, and approximately 40% of those are children that died.
That's just statistically like the population of Gaza.
Correct.
So that's what, 10,000 out of a population of 2 million is what, 0.5%?
Yeah.
So they've wiped out 0.5% of their population so far.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, we kind of just brought up before, but there's been a lot of, in my opinion, very stupid debate over like, is this actually genocide or not? Dude, when you wipe off tens of thousands of people, like, does it really matter what you call it at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it meets the definitions of genocide for the international bodies that keep track of it, because it's attempting...
America won't call that genocide, though.
Yeah, it's attempting to kill an entire segment of people in a given space. That's an attempted genocide.
Well, and so that's, I'll include an article. There was a bunch of history experts that weighed in on this article about, was it actually genocide or not? And I did have this good quote from the article I wanted to just read. A guy named Raz Segal, the program director of genocide studies at Stockton University, concretely said it was a textbook case of genocide. Segal believed that Israeli forces are completing 3 genocidal acts, which include killing, causing bodily harm, and measures calculated to bring about the destruction of the group. And it's kind of like what you were talking about before. He pointed to mass levels of destruction on total siege of basic necessities like food, water, fuel, and medical supplies as evidence. And I agree with that. Again, I know like if you want to get into like the real foreign policy definitions of genocide and stuff like that, whatever. And there are others that disagree with him because like, well, it's not a systematic killing off of all the people there. They're just trying to kill Hamas, and these are just casualties of war. And I'm like,
it's just random killing of
right.
everyone.
It's like, so it's incidental killing as opposed to intentional. So it's not just like, what do you want at this point then?
Yeah, they've dropped more bombs than we've dropped in any period during the Afghanistan war in like every single day.
Right.
In Gaza, in a much, much smaller area.
And I think what concerns me too is that Israel leaders are making it so much worse with their rhetoric. I included several quotes from different leaders here that I thought it would just be worth talking about. We'll start with Israel President Isaac Herzog's statement, and this is during an October 13th press conference where he said, quote, "It's an entire nation that is out there that's responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat." The whole point of taking over via coup d'etat is by literal force. You can't just nicely fight against that. So the idea is like, oh no, you're still blaming the victim after like a hostile takeover by Hamas.
And half the population wasn't even born.
Right.
When Hamas rose to power.
So what are we even talking about right now? Again, like this is already genocidal rhetoric right here because you're just dehumanizing all these people.
And even as we said, the Israeli government supported Hamas because they wanted to divide Palestinian leadership.
And that's not all. Agriculture Minister Avi Dikhtar told Israeli Channel 12 News over the weekend that the war would be Gaza's Nakba, using the Arabic word for catastrophe that many used to describe the 1948 displacement of roughly 700,000 Palestinians who were expelled from the land in what now is we know as Israel today. So again, they don't care. They just want to have massive destruction. They want to make these people pay no matter what happens. And this is the exact type of thing we've seen from Israeli leadership for a long time now. This is not surprising.
It's nice to see them actually acknowledging the Nakba, which normally they say never happened.
Right. And finally, I have to just mention this as well. A week before Dikhtar's comments, Israeli Heritage Minister Amahai Eliyahu sparked outcry after he suggested that dropping a nuclear bomb on the Gaza Strip was just one of the possibilities in the current conflict. Now, Bibi did suspend Eliyahu from cabinet meetings and put out a statement saying that his statements were not based in any of all reality and that they will have operation under the highest standards of international law to avoid harming innocents. But just the fact that a right-hand person is even suggesting
high up in the government
is just nuking it anyway. And sure, like,
I mean, this isn't a hurricane. Let's be serious here. You can't just nuke a populated area.
So I don't know, man. It's getting so much worse, and I think it's just gonna keep getting worse for the long time to come too.
Well, going by the U.S.'s rationale, or at least what people still to this day falsely claim was the reason for using atomic weapons in Japan, it would fit, right? Because they don't want to have to go in, use ground forces, end up with a lot more deaths. So just use the nuclear weapons as a show of force and try to make Hamas surrender.
Right. It's scary, man.
I don't know what can be done. I'm glad to see that the ceasefire movement is starting to grow.
It is. And I think pro-Palestinian movement is rising as well.
Mm-hmm. Certainly much more than there was even a few years ago in the U.S. here.
I agree.
I don't know if you saw any of the footage from the pro-Israel rally that happened this past week.
No, I didn't.
Where Speaker Mike Johnson spoke at the event, and there were chants of no ceasefire, and Mike Johnson called the idea of a ceasefire ridiculous. So that doesn't exactly fill me with confidence. But
Jesus Christ.
I do hope that the pressure continues to mount. I hope, even from like a purely cynical perspective, the fact that we have an election next year, you have a large Muslim population in Michigan, which is a critical swing state, and Joe Biden's polling is down. I don't care if he just does it to try to get political points and to try to secure a second term, because ultimately all all I care about is protecting innocent lives in Gaza. So if he were to openly put pressure on Israel and say, make funding conditional on a ceasefire, I don't care if he does it for purely political reasons. I just hope he would do it.
I agree. Let's bring things back home and talk about our potential leadership. Well, at least we know who's not going to be.
Everyone in the Republican Party that's not Donald Trump.
Yeah, but we're going to do this slow for content purposes, so buckle in and deal with it, all right? Because that's right. The next one to drop has been named. It is Tim Scott.
Generic Republican candidate, 60-year-old virgin Tim Scott.
Who is going to be the leading voice of reason and kindness for the Republican Party. A brand new face, someone they have never seen before because he's actually not a white guy for a change.
And Jesus. And
that he was going to sweep in Iowa because he spent so much money in Iowa already compared to everyone else.
Dropping out of the race.
And he's gone. What do you think that says about what's going on so far? Do you think... I'm guessing that he's doing it obviously because he has no money. That's the first and foremost reason. But I think we'll probably hear very soon that he's going to endorse Nikki Haley in like a weird attempt to try to have like one coalition against Trump before Iowa. And they'll probably maybe try to pressure Ron DeSantis, but he's too stupid to ever drop out, so he won't. That's my only guess.
It's a good strategy.
I think it's their only strategy.
He used the last of his campaign cash hiring that actress to be his girlfriend during the debates. That was the end of it.
Ugh. And that's enough about Tim Scott because that's all that's all he deserves.
Yeah, that's...
So then we're going to turn it to the leader of the Republican primary, Donald Trump, who was celebrating Veterans Day by doing this.
Like tens of millions of people within our nation, I'm proud and strong. I'm a very proud election denier.
Notice how that sounded a lot like he was saying that he's a very proud liar. It was like you get those things where people really, their brain just wants them to get caught, and they say and do things that really seem out of place.
Yeah.
I'm an election liar. I mean...
And of course he didn't stop there, because why would he just be stupid when he could also be dangerous and hateful?
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
Vermin? Are you vermin?
Some very fascistic speech while saying that he's going to go after the fascists.
Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. As far as I can tell, him and Joe Biden are exactly the same.
Yeah. Marxists, communists, leftists, fascists, like those things, even on a political, like purely political level, are opposites.
These are things I don't like. I heard they're bad.
Everyone keeps telling me I'm a fascist, so I think that's a bad thing. Meanwhile, his entire audience is like, wait, we like fascism. They're all vermin. We're gonna kill them like dogs. He's said, I mean, his rhetoric is we haven't covered it because I just don't care. Yeah, I don't care at all.
See, I know you.
Either Trump is going to be in jail, in which case he has no chance, or he's going to be president again. I feel like those are the only two possible outcomes. I desperately would like to live in another country because something is fundamentally broken in the United States.
Well, and I think back to, like many other liberals did, Clinton's deplorables gaffe, right? Where that made such huge headlines. How dare she write off half the country as deplorable and speak ill of them? But then when Trump does it, it's whatever. It's the same. It's what you already expect out of him, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
He tells it like it is.
Right. I cannot believe you have all these people who try to claim that they are the moral majority or the moral high ground compared to the rest of this godless secular society, and then will eat this crap up.
He's been saying over and over as we've been leading up to the election that he is going to imprison people that went against him. He is going to go after prosecutors, anyone that he feels has wronged him or would wrong him. And it's like nobody cares. It's literally...
because it's normalized now.
Like talking about...
the weather.
He's like talking about making the brown coat army. And we're just like, oh, that Donald Trump.
Right.
He's such a scamp.
It's what he does.
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. We had a good run. Well, let's talk about something else. There's not much more to say.
This is fun news, though. This is good news.
It has been a crazy week in Congress for the GOP. Tuesday, for some reason, like where most of these stories came from, I don't know what was going on. What was in the
there
water
full moon
in the Capitol? Yes, skeptics. We're hardcore materialist skeptics.
was Mercury.
Was Mercury in retrograde?
I said Mercury. See, you didn't say yeah. Oh, I screwed it up. I'm so upset. So let's start with my favorite story from the week. I am so happy. Oklahoma Senator
Mark Wayne Mullen, and his name is Mark Wayne. It's not Mark Wayne, it's Mark Wayne.
Because of course it is. Got so heated and challenged the Teamsters president to a fight during a Senate hearing.
Sean O'Brien, the Teamsters president, and Mark Wayne, which you will not be surprised, was a one-time MMA fighter. And Sean O'Brien is a Teamsters president, so they're both very blustery individuals.
So let's listen to this Senate hearing.
This is supposed to be like on the situation of the American people, like the dire financial situation of the American people and how unions help them. That's what this hearing is supposed to be for. I think they're supposed to
also talk about just the PRO Act. If remember, like the Pro Collective Bargaining Act.
Let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior. As everybody knows in this hearing, the last time him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down.
Look at you.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
For those who obviously this is an audio medium, we'll include the link to the full thing in the show notes. But that was
6 minutes long. They keep going.
Oh, and it's beautiful. It's so much fun. You need to watch the entire thing.
It's really just Bernie Sanders trying to get them both to shut up, and they keep just
also
going after each other.
I know this is totally an audio medium, but I love when Sean O'Brien is just sitting there with his hands crossed, just staring at him. Oh, I would love to do that right now.
And they have the union guys behind them laughing.
They're just laughing their butts off.
Well, and if you caught that in the clip, Mark Wayne says, I would love it if you were there when I was building my plumbing business by myself, right? Because Sean O'Brien's critique of him was he pretends to be self-made, but he's a clown and a fraud.
Yeah.
And Mark Wayne's response is, I built my plumbing business by myself.
Worked long hours.
He inherited that plumbing business from his father.
Cool.
Should be no surprise to anyone.
Oh.
But that's not all that happened. You also had an interview with Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee, who was one of the representatives who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy. Also, he was very prominent in that whole alien hearing, the aliens are real hearing. But he was doing an interview with NPR's Claudia Grisales in a hallway in the Capitol building when Burchett stumbled forward and yelled after Kevin McCarthy, who was walking past him, "Why'd you elbow me in the back, Kevin?" "Hey, Kevin, you got any guts?" Burchett then called McCarthy a jerk and chased him down the hallway. When he caught up to him, he said, "What kind of chicken move is that? You're pathetic, man. You're so pathetic."
He said something later on too about how back when I was a kid, in Tennessee, we would stand up and we'd face our men, like real men. We'd face you
I'll
right in the eye. Yeah, I say, boy.
Yeah, he said that McCarthy elbowed him in the kidney as he walked past.
And McCarthy's response to that was, "Oh, he'd know if I'd actually hit him."
Right. He said they bumped shoulders as he walked past. I would say Kevin McCarthy definitely purposefully bumped into Tim Burchett because he is that petty.
Oh, of course he is. Again, everyone knows he's a sleazeball. And of course, he would absolutely be the type of kid who would just run up to you and like smack you like from behind and then run away.
Right. He should have done the old tap him on the shoulder.
And then the other
Yeah,
side.
as he walks past. That's the better way to do it. And if you thought that was it, not even close. We also finally got the George Santos ethics report being released. We'll put the whole thing, the link in the show notes. It's worth a read.
It's glorious.
He's paying for OnlyFans account with there's a lot of stuff.
But he doesn't know what OnlyFans is, though. So. So let's read from the report. According to the report, the committee unanimously voted, pursuant to Committee Rule 28, to refer to the Department of Justice, DOJ, substantial evidence that Representative Santos knowingly caused his campaign committee to file false or incomplete reports with the Federal Elections Commission, used campaign funds for personal purposes, like Jason was just saying, engaged in fraudulent conduct in connection with Redstone Strategies LLC,
which he was running,
and engaged in knowing and willful violations of the Ethics in Government Act as it relates to the financial disclosure statement filed with the House.
It goes on to say, Representative Santos sought to fraudulently exploit every aspect of his House
Every aspect
of his House candidacy for his own personal financial profit.
Beautiful.
He blatantly stole from his campaign. He deceived donors into providing what they thought were contributions to his campaign, but were in fact payments for his personal benefit.
We talked about that.
He reported fictitious loans to his political committees to induce donors and party committees to make further contributions to his campaign. So he said, I donated like $300,000. We even talked about this when he first filed these, of like, he said that he donated like $500,000 to his own campaign, and everyone was wondering how he got that money.
Well, and I think from the report, I'm trying to remember it, they said something along the lines like in one time in particular, he made an $80,000 campaign all at once, or donation all at once to his campaign, but he only has a $50,000 salary and absolutely no assets that he that he ever registered anywhere.
And the
so
answer,
we don't know how he made these.
Right, and the answer is he didn't.
Right. Like it's the worst, stupidest crime possible.
Mm-hmm. So then he diverted more campaign money to himself as purported repayments of those loans that he never made.
Yep.
He used his connections to high-value donors and other political campaigns to obtain additional funds for himself through fraudulent or otherwise questionable business dealings, aka the Trump method. He sustained all of this through a consistent series of lies to his constituents, donors, and staff about his background and experience. Representative Santos continues to flout his statutory financial disclosure obligations and has failed to correct countless errors and omissions in his past financial disclosure statements, despite being repeatedly reminded by the investigative committee and the committee of his requirements to do so. The investigative committee also found that, despite his attempts to blame others for much of the misconduct, which that's his big defense, he didn't know anything. It was all the people working for him. And also, it's just a smear job witch hunt. Representative Santos was a knowing and active participant in the wrongdoing. Particularly troubling was Representative Santos' lack of candor during the investigation itself, which is not particularly troubling to me, Joe. I don't care that he didn't cooperate with the investigation. The particularly troubling part to me is all the fraud and lies.
Right, exactly. Then promptly after that report release, Santos then took to Twitter to put a very long message out. And I just want to read a little bit of this as well because I think this is fun. Quote, if there was a single ounce of ethics, all caps, in this quote-unquote ethics committee, they would not have released this biased report. The committee went to extraordinary lengths to smear myself and my legal team about me not being forthcoming. My legal bill suggests otherwise. It is a disgusting politicized smear that shows the depths of how low our federal government has sunk. Everyone who participated in this grave miscarriage of justice, which for some reason is capitalized, I don't know why,
Following in Trump's footsteps.
should be ashamed of themselves. Going on, he says, I will, however, not be seeking re-election for a second term in 2024, as my family deserves better than to be under the gun from the press all the time.
Well, you know, his niece was kidnapped by the communist Chinese government. He's going to get expelled from Congress.
So
that's probably going to happen real soon.
A new effort has already risen to expel him once again by New York Republicans. That's probably going to pass, and we will no longer see the beauty that is George Santos.
And like all of this stuff too, if you read the report, look through all the appendices, you have all of these things that are like in different names. George DeVolder, Anthony DeVolder, George Santos. It's
oh my goodness. What a time to be
pretty
alive.
incriminating. Yeah. Like, there's evidence. It's not just that they said all these things. Like there's a paper trail, there's text messages, there is evidence. He's going to get expelled from Congress.
Well, and remember, this is the Republican-led House Ethics Committee.
Yeah, and it was a unanimous
right. Bye, George, Anthony, whoever you are.
Katara. You were fabulous while you lasted.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
So this week, we have a local story for Fox in the Head, and I was able to witness this firsthand of Jason. Okay, I'm too excited.
Set the stage.
I'm too excited. So, okay. Because I'm a crazy person, Jason, I follow a bunch of conservatives on Facebook. See, you're already judging. I get it. I understand it. I've accepted it. All right. One of those outlets is Wisconsin Right Now, which is the far-right conservative local news outlet in Wisconsin. They're headed up by Jim Purisic. I don't know how to pronounce his name. And Jessica McBride. I was absolutely inundated with tons of posts about what happened in a town called Wauwatosa. And I'm just going to say some of the things that were said about this incident before I tell you what it was. So no, we're not doing that because, that's insane, period. Jim went, I have to admit that when some of the emails started coming in from Tosa, I thought this may be a short article, but I was wrong. Jessica McBride's instincts were stronger about it, and she made the comment that this story should go national. Boy, she was right. The outrage over this story is incredible. You want to know what this story was, Jason?
Are we putting kids in like death camps or something?
You are so close, man. You are so freaking close, you have no idea. The Wauwatosa city administrator asked city employees to put up snow people and to not use red and green lights just by themselves.
Shocking.
I know, it's shocking. I know
We should have given a trigger warning. We should have
silence.
We should have told people to keep their kids out of the room during this segment. I can't believe you just said all that. We have a clean tag on our podcast. I'm gonna have to put it to explicit specifically for this episode.
So I'm not kidding, Jason. Just because of that one email, that created such outrage in the right-wing local community here that there was an entire harassment campaign of the Wauwatosa city administrator. The mayor had to get involved. It made it to Daily Mail. It made it to Fox News, and of course, Libs of TikTok.
Newsmax.
And it has become a national story. And Newsmax, you're right. Thank you. So let's listen to what Fox and Friends has to say about
which apparently
Wauwatosa.
One of the anchors is from Wisconsin. That's kind of embarrassing.
All right. Well, back home in Wisconsin, there's a Wisconsin council that is sparking outrage because they have instructed staff, this was in an email, to avoid red and green decorations in public buildings at Christmas. They want them to replace any religious ornaments or anything red and green with snow people. So here's what the email said. It says, we kindly ask that departments refrain from using religious decorations or solely associated with Christmas, such as red and green colors, when decorating public spaces within the city building. Instead, we encourage you to opt for more neutral and inclusive, I hate that language, decorations that celebrate the season without flavoring any particular faith belief system. Here are a few suggestions: snowflakes, snow people, other non-religious symbols associated with winter.
How offended are you that there aren't snow women? Does that bother you that we would call it a snowman?
That's not inclusive. That's not inclusive.
You feel underrepresented.
They said snow people, didn't they?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like as a culture that we haven't always said snow men and women or snow people. Does that bother you, Rachel?
But you know what bothers me? The pagan winter thing. You know, like I'm not celebrating winter. I'm celebrating Christmas, Christ's birth. And other people are celebrating Hanukkah, which I love to say Happy Hanukkah to people who are celebrating Hanukkah. So I don't understand all this and this inclusive thing. It's not true. What they're trying to do is exclude religious people.
But the funny thing about Joey's question to you is, like, we've moved beyond, you know.
It's snow people.
I get it.
We moved beyond
what in the
distancing
world?
ourselves from Christmas to now we got to. Somebody in that meeting goes, "Hey, red and green is too affiliated with a religion. We need to be more, whatever."
Now it's the Palestinian colors.
And somebody else in the room goes, "But be careful, don't make it a snowman."
Yeah.
I would
make it a snow person.
If I were in that town, I'd wear a tartan plaid suit every day for the next month and just have like jingle bells off of me and a Bible in my hand.
Do you think that the people in that town are like upset?
I don't know. You're the Wisconsin expert.
I don't know. This is Wauwatosa. It's a kind of a normal place. It's just when it gets to Wisconsin, it's over.
Instead of riding,
it's not Berkeley. It's Wauwatosa.
Instead of riding with pitchforks, they all show up dressed as a nativity. That's what it is. They're going to go march through the streets dressed as nativity. I'll send you a camel. I'll get one.
All right. Well, too bad, Wauwatosa. Bah humbug.
I am eagerly awaiting the camel. Are you going to wear a red and green suit with jingle bells and a Bible the next time you're in Wauwatosa, Joe?
So I've seen so many comments about like that exactly. Like, next time I go and pay my taxes in Wauwatosa, I'm going to dress like a Christmas tree. I'm like, okay, like, is this where you're jumping
No
to?
one cares.
No one cares. Okay, I have the original, and I'll include it in the show notes and the articles as well, but I have the original email, and I just want to just quickly read the first part. They read the second part for you, which was the we kindly
And they
ask
blame the Wauwatosa City Council.
That's wrong.
They're not the ones responsible.
Right. So literally, here was the rationale for it. That's all it was. Currently, Christmas decorations are prevalent throughout public counters at City Hall and perhaps other buildings as well. While we understand the significance of this holiday for many, it is important to recognize that not all Wauwatosa employees, residents, or business owners celebrate Christmas. In our ongoing efforts to foster a more equitable and inclusive community, we believe it is crucial to be considerate of how we decorate public spaces during the season. And then it goes into everything as well. Yeah, the whole reaction of like, it's inclusive.
And yeah, I guess we didn't really say it, but if anybody wanted to know or weren't sure what Wauwatosa was in the greater scheme of Wisconsin, it's a very, very near Milwaukee suburb. It's one of the oldest suburbs, just west of the city of Milwaukee. A lot of crossover there. I mean, it's almost part of the city at this point.
Right. I can't get over this idea that this is a big deal. And this is such a non-issue that I can't figure out where the actual issue was.
Wait till we tell Fox and Friends that Wauwatosa used to have a Christian cross on their city crest, and it was replaced by In God We Trust.
So, okay, and let's quickly talk about the snow people and the colors thing. It's inanimate snow and colors, you guys. Like, sure, okay, like...
It's awkward language. Use snowmen, who cares?
Right.
But, like, it doesn't matter if someone says snow people.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to flip out on them.
Right, and if you really don't like it, you can give them an eye roll. This should not be a national news story that's covered on Fox freaking News.
They said don't use red and green. And then I like how she was like, oh, those are Palestinian colors. What? Where did that come from?
So, because I was so confused, Jason, I actually did my due diligence and actually emailed and tried to contact Jim and Jessica about this. Jessica politely deferred to Jim because he's the one who wrote the article that went crazy.
Should have asked him how to pronounce his last name.
To be honest, I really regret not doing that. So I had 5 questions. I just want to read you his answers.
Jesus, we're doing journalism on this show?
Hell yeah, man.
Wow.
This is the quality content you receive from this show.
Unprepared.
Question number 1. On Facebook, you and Jessica were both seen calling snow people insane and idiotic. Why exactly do you think this is insane or idiotic? His answer: I think the fact that we have gotten to the point in society where we have to call snowmen snow people as to not offend anyone is crazy. But I don't lose any sleep over it.
Well, clearly you do.
Look, you made a national story, man.
It's crazy, but it's fine. I don't care.
Does it honestly matter what color holiday lights public buildings have for decoration? His answer, nope. Personally, I don't care what color lights are used, if any at all, but Tosa employees care, and that's why we reported it. Now, this one comes with a little bit of context, so I'll tell you the question first. Why do you think other non-conservative media outlets took much longer to report this story? Because the entire time this was going on all weekend long, while my face was just being bombarded with this, there was this very common conspiracy that you hear usually on the right, which is the liberal media is ignoring this issue because they don't want us to get the truth out or whatever bullshit is, right? So his answer to that question is 2 reasons. Number 1, our sourcing. Many have come to not trust the media, but we have many readers that trust us and send us tips that they normally would not send to the media. Whatever. Number 2, I would hope we could all agree that local media swings left, and based on that, I don't think they want to cover an issue that puts progressives in a bad light.
I don't know if he's ever watched or listened to local media in the Milwaukee area, but it does not lean left at all.
Then I asked, there's a lot of people, me included, who don't see that email as insane or idiotic. How would you convince people like me that this is such a gross overstep? Because apparently you do care about this. It's not my mission or intent to convince anyone of what to think. We reported it. We obviously have our opinions on it, but ultimately leave it up to the readers to decide. Wait a chicken out, man. Come on. People's opinions are one thing. The law is another. The U.S. Supreme Court has found that Christmas displays and decorations may be erected in government buildings. Even the Freedom from Religion Foundation acknowledges this. Wauwatosa went farther than even the UW system, which allows Christmas trees. The Liberty Council demand letter, which I forgot to even add, there was an actual demand letter from a religious freedom group that, oh my God, wait, there's so much, man. They literally said the city's efforts to comprehensively eliminate Christmas symbols is Orwellian.
They said, we kindly ask in that email. We kindly ask that those jackbooted thugs.
So anyway, the Liberty Council demand letter to Wauwatosa is a good summation of the case law. It's really not. It's insane. It's like 1 page of insanity and then goes like for 5 more pages of the historic importance of Christianity and Christmas.
Yeah, we'll include it in the show notes, but we ain't reading.
I ain't reading that shit, man. Tosa almost certainly sent out its clarification email to address these concerns, which they did, by the way, and they literally said exactly what we're saying, which is, we didn't tell you to do anything. There are individual liberty concerns according to the past U.S. DOJ guidance. Some may not care about the exclusion of decorations, but case law indicates that bans can run afoul of other people's constitutional rights.
I don't know, the way to really care about the important things that are going on right now. Nobody cares about this stupid war on Christmas, culture war garbage. It's been going on forever.
So long. And again, I didn't get a chance. I did ask him follow-ups and he didn't get a chance to email me back, or he's not going to, whatever. And I Jim, if you're listening to this, I appreciate that you even emailed me at all. I thank you.
How do you say your last name?
How do you say your last name? I'm sorry for that. That one I actually apologize for.
Piowarczyk? That's my guess. You can tell me if I'm right or not. Chuck.
Okay. But this is not a story. And the fact that supposed liberal news sources are not covering this doesn't mean that they're trying to cover up some weird progressive bad light thing.
Nobody cares.
This is not a newsworthy thing.
If you want to fight it locally and go against the city of Wauwatosa and file a lawsuit and get standing and all that, go for it. I don't care.
Right.
And we are both extremely left and atheists, and I don't care what any city does for Christmas is the least Christian thing. I'm sorry, all these people like it's all about Christ.
Well, yeah,
No,
that's what that one lady said on Fox, right? It was like, I'm worshiping Jesus, or I'm celebrating the birth of Jesus. I said, let's talk about that.
Yeah, with your pagan Christmas tree and giving gifts, which comes from Saturnalia. And the church was against celebrating Christmas. It's in the wrong season. There's all these things. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with Christianity. There aren't evergreen trees in the Middle East. It's
what?
It's pagan nature worship. That's why you bring the trees in the house and decorate it. Like, literally, there's a passage in the Bible that makes fun of people doing exactly this.
Do not be like the pagans who decorate their trees with gold and silver.
And that's exactly what we do for Christmas. It's fine. I don't care. I'm culturally Christian. I celebrate Christmas.
I now celebrate Christmas as like an anti-Christian now, like just in spite of Christianity. I do this with middle fingers to the sky, Jesus.
So it's fine. I don't care that you celebrate Christmas. And I don't care if you say snowmen. And I don't care if you say snow people. It's weird, but it doesn't bother me.
Well, okay, and here's my thing. Number one, like, gendering language is stupid. That's first, right? But at the same time, it's also snow people, so who cares? I've seen, so for example, like diagrams or dioramas of snow people where it's actually like snow families. So it's like a mom, a dad, and kids, or snow kids, or like
the stickers on the back of people's cars.
Yeah, just crap like that, and they're all just snow people or crap. It makes sense to say snow people for that type of stuff. So let's just get rid of snowmen. No one cares. And if you say snowmen, no one's gonna care either. It doesn't matter.
To me, it's like saying humanity. It includes everyone. Like, yes, the word man is in there, but human, it's fine. It's the same thing you say like male man. I think it's condescending to say like male person or male carrier. Mailman's fine. I don't think of it as gender specific. So I just don't care about that sort of language. I don't care if someone uses it, but it's
whatever.
In my head, I don't think of it as gendered.
No.
So it doesn't bother me.
Well, and again, like, I think to get super upset about someone even using snow people if they really wanted to, it really gives the vibes of the whole like green M&M thing. Where it's like, they're taking our sexy green M&Ms away. Like,
which is why that's the theme of our Fox in the Head segment, because that encapsulates this kind of thought process where you get so upset over the most trivial things
that do not matter at all.
And that is Foxed in the Head.
Right. And again, I just want to repeat, like, this was such a good example that I got to witness firsthand of how manufactured anti-woke or whatever outrage on the right is.
Mm-hmm.
Some random journalists found this random email that talks about asking people to put up snowmen, but calls them snow people.
It's certainly someone from the city of Wauwatosa sent this to that Wisconsin right now. Mm.
And it blew up into national outrage. If people want to talk about how the right-wing media machine isn't doing harm, they are lying to you, because this is how powerful they actually are to turn something like this into a national story.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
So for our main segment tonight, this may be a little niche for some people. Actually, for most people, we're the niche ones.
We've had similar topics in the past. We've talked about Gamergate, which I think is very near this. We've talked about, can progressives be religious? I think that's
we
very
talked about that
close
too.
to this.
So this was sparked by a person named Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And you may not know her name. She's not super well known. She was kind of well known in the atheist skeptic community for a little while.
Yeah, I would say I wasn't particularly aware of her stuff. I didn't read her books or anything, but I certainly knew the name.
Well, and she made circuits on the typical late night talk shows. I think she was also on the Daily Show to talk about her book. And she was an open atheist critic of Islam, and she went through horrible things, and that was awful.
Yeah, she was from Kenya. She was raised Muslim by a very extremist, the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Very extremist sect of Islam.
And then came to America and then renounced Islam. But why are we talking about her? Well, over the last, I'll say maybe 5 years or so, 4 or 5 years, Ayaan Hirsi Ali has kind of become a mouthpiece for the right. And the reason why she did that is because how many people have kind of drifted over to the right. It was our last segment. It's the woke stuff. She wants to take a stand against woke culture.
She doesn't like the term snow people.
Apparently not. So this last week, she went from being a progressive atheist critic of Islam to now a born-again Christian. And she wrote an essay called Why I Am Now a Christian. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk a little bit about her essay. I'll also include it in the show notes, and it's written on Unheard, which is basically the conservative version of Medium, which is great.
It's a religious conservative site.
And I want to just have a nice casual conversation, Jason, about how some of these people that we'll talk about basically used anti-wokeness to drift themselves all the way to Christian nationalism and the far right. Does that sound good?
Well, I can't say no now.
Good point. All right, here we go. So why did Ayaan Hirsi Ali become a Christian? Well, she gives 3 typical reasons. Here's the quote. Western civilization is under threat from 3 different but related forces. Number 1, the resurgence of great power authoritarianism and expansionism nationalism in the forms of the Chinese Communist Party and Vladimir Putin's Russia. Number 2, the rise of global Islamism, which threatens to mobilize a vast population against the West. And number 3, the viral spread of woke ideology, which is eating into the moral fiber of the next generation. Did you get why Christianity came from that?
And that's why Jesus.
And I'm not like trying to like be mean. Like, again, I'll include the essay for you. Like, she doesn't ever go into why she actually wants to be religious or wants to be a Christian again for religious reasons. It's just she's anti things. And so she wants to be a Christian against those things.
All the people that are also anti those things are also Christian, as it turns out.
She goes on to say, but we can't fight off these formidable forces unless we can answer the question, what is it that unites us? The response that God is dead seems insufficient. So too does the attempt to find solace in the rules-based liberal international order. The only credible answer, I believe, lies in our desire to uphold the legacy of the Judeo-Christian tradition.
And I think there it is, right? She needs something to belong to. There has to be, in her mind, something that binds everyone on the side she's in together. And what she's choosing to be that binding force is Christianity.
Well, and we talked about this in the previous episodes of when we talked about the atheist movement, where one of the biggest things of the atheist and skeptic movement was we didn't have dogma to bind us together. We didn't have a set of rules to bind us together. And I don't know about you, but like I was one of those that openly celebrated that. When we were asked, so why are you an atheist? Why do you gather with other atheists? And I would even tell them like, well, the best part about the atheist community is that the only thing that brings us together is we say no to one question. Do you believe that God exists? Otherwise, you can be Republican, Democrat, you can be crazy, smart, insane, whatever it is, right? That's all you need to qualify as an atheist. And I learned very quickly that just being anti something can lead you down a pretty dark path very quickly. And I think that's what's happening right now with a lot of atheists, a lot of, we'll say, free thinkers or supposed skeptics who base their entire ideology on just being against something else. They don't stand for anything, they just want to stand against something so that they have no vision forward. It's always about fighting against something else that they hate. And that always leads to a very unstable foundation and belief, in my opinion. I'll read one more excerpt from the article saying,
Bertrand Russell.
Yeah, thank you.
Who wrote the Why I Am Not a Christian essay, which was very famous and influential.
Yep. Russell and other activist atheists believed that with the rejection of God, we would enter an age of reason and intelligent humanism. But the, quote, God hole, the void left by the retreat of the church, has merely been filled by a jumble of irrational quasi-religious dogma. The result is a world where modern cults prey on the dislocated masses, offering them spurious reasons for being and action, mostly by engaging in virtue-signaling theater on behalf of a victimized minority or our supposedly doomed planet.
So anti-climate change, anti-CRT, I guess you could say.
No, it's not even that. It's just anti-talking about
social justice.
Yes, just generally just talking about anti-civil rights.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason why I put this in here is I think that also speaks to another part of the anti-woke, and we can also talk about the anti-SJW, but it's the same thing.
Yeah. It's just one terminology kind of replaced the other. And I think even woke is starting to go away, which we'll get into.
But I think a big part of those movements is whataboutism. There's so many times I think back to even like Richard Dawkins, right? Where, and we could throw him on this list too, where he would talk about how we shouldn't even talk about feminism and women's rights in the United States because women in the Middle East have it so much worse.
Certainly an odd thing that I see in this, and if you haven't been listening to every single episode, and if not, come on, there's only
we're so great. Come on,
it's only 105 more. We are obviously from the atheist community. We were part of a local atheist group in Milwaukee that basically splintered and ended because the people that were in charge pushed and embraced right-wing anti-woke ideology, and the vast majority of the community that we had built were leftists, were liberals, and did not want to go down that route. And so we are very much aware of this situation. This is our background. This is where we come from. This is how Joe and I met.
Yeah.
in the first place. So that's, we are like, we talk about the atheist community. We've met a lot of these people. We've talked to a lot of these people doing conventions or at the Reason Rally or doing podcasts. So this is something that we're pretty well acquainted with, that we have a lot of experience with, which is why we do these topics from time to time when stories like this come up. And one thing that I've seen a lot in the atheist skeptic community of people that ended up being extremely conservative, extremely far right, they all oddly had a preoccupation with Islam, which I get from people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali. That's how she was raised. She has a particular knowledge and interest and motivation for trying to fight for women's rights, for the rights of people in Muslim majority countries under Sharia, that sort of thing. But it's odd to see people like Michael Shermer.
Sure.
And
you should describe who he is first.
Right. The American editor of Skeptic magazine, and people like James Lindsay, who we'll talk about, that they're American. They have had almost no exposure to Islam in general. Bill Maher, he had that famous rant on Islam with Ben Affleck.
No, that was Sam Harris.
It was on Bill Maher's show. Yeah. But yeah, Sam Harris would be another example. And he's called Islam the motherlode of bad ideas.
Yep.
And these people that I get, if you're an atheist, like, I'm an atheist, I don't believe Islam is true. And I believe giving your life to follow any belief that's not true is ultimately harmful to you. So I believe that all religion really is harmful. But I don't care about individuals' beliefs, and I don't care as an American. Like, I'm not particularly worried about Islam. No Muslim is trying to take my rights away. It's Christians that are doing that in the U.S. So it always struck me as unusual.
Well, do you think that's because I don't know how you feel about the term, but we'll just say it for now, but the new atheist movement that emerged in the 2000s, do you think that's because that was kind of a result of 9/11?
I think certainly some, like Sam Harris.
I think Sam Harris is definitely a good example of that, yeah.
Was reacting to that and was kind of preoccupied.
Sure.
With that. I don't really see it from Dennett, Hitchens, or Dawkins. When we were talking about Mythicist Milwaukee, the group we were a part of, I don't always like bringing up their name, but that's who it was.
Well, they're not even a thing anymore, so.
Right, it is gone. But one of the people in the leadership of that group that was really the most right-wing and was the one responsible for pushing that group in a right direction.
Was very invested.
Yeah, just always talking about Islam and would be
going on ISIS boards or something like that.
Just very, very preoccupied with that aspect of atheism, which was like the anti-Muslim, anti-Islam. And it always struck me as kind of strange, for a group that one of our biggest issues is separation of church and state. Like, yes, Muslim majority countries, that is a big issue. And that shows us what happens when there is this marriage between religion and state. Like, that's why we should fight for the separation of government with religion, because make no mistake, if people like Mike Johnson were in charge of the government and could do everything they wanted, would turn the United States into a tyrannical, fundamentalist Christian nation. That's what The Handmaid's Tale is basically about.
Yeah.
And that's what would happen if we let fundamentalist Christians rewrite all of our laws and rewrite our Constitution. It's not something specific about Islam. It's just the fact that fundamentalist Muslims write the laws in those countries. Sharia means essentially Muslim law.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's not something different about Islam that Christianity somehow doesn't have. And Ayaan Hirsi Ali even wrote in her article that Christianity grew beyond dogma, whereas Islam has not, which is just absolutely not true. It's just that countries like the United States were set up to be secular and to not rely specifically on religious doctrine. And we have this movement in the United States right now to try to push back and create a government that is Christian nationalist. And it's these supposed atheists that are on that side currently, which is really the issue at hand here.
Well, so let's talk about that. And you brought up James Lindsay before, and I think he's worth mentioning. He's a kind of person you probably would never have any clue about, but he was pretty, I don't want to say prominent in the skeptic community, but he made his rounds for a little while.
And he specifically partnered with our old friends.
Yes, he did.
And he is one of the most outspoken, like, anti-woke crusaders that are online currently.
Well, and that's what's interesting is because I was looking up some stuff for him, and just last May, James Lindsay, who is still, as far as I can tell, a pretty fervent atheist, was the speaker at the 2023 Turning Points USA Pastors Summit, which is insane. Because that's we talked about Turning Points USA before, and that's the far right-wing Charlie Kirk organization. This is their specific training session for Christian pastors to be far right-wing Christian nationalists. That's what it is. And he is giving a headlining talk at this. And I even included an article that I found that was written by some Christian blog or something like that about this. And I thought it was just an interesting quote from it, which said, "We see Lindsay alongside guys like Jordan Peterson as someone who clearly understands and proclaims a great deal of God's truth, yet remains lost in their sin apart from Christ." And I think that really sums up like what we're talking about here. The idea that you don't have to be a part of their group to be a useful idiot for what they want. They are saying the exact same things that the far Christian right is using. And they're just becoming these pawns in this game of total domination by the far right Christian extremists, which is what you were just talking about earlier. And even then, I even saw other stuff with James Lindsay where he was like getting involved with the Southern Baptist Convention, telling them to remove leaders who didn't repudiate CRT, and getting involved with trying to save the Southern Baptist Convention. I'm like, why would an atheist want to do that? But again, it's because when your entire ideology is just against things and never standing for anything, you have no idea what you actually should be aligning yourself with anymore.
There is even a pro-conservative atheist group called Atheists for Liberty that, according to their mission, they are an educational nonprofit organization dedicated to defending the fundamental freedoms that support the human quest for knowledge and the separation of religion and government. But they support the right-wing politicians in the United States. They're Trump people. They're libertarians. They're a bunch of rich guys that don't want to pay taxes. And they're for separation of church and state, but yet they're telling you to vote for the same people that would 100% create a new state that is made of the church. As we heard from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Lauren Boebert, there isn't no separation of church and state. It's all about what the church wants you to do. That's how they govern. And I thought it was interesting just to go down some of their board of advisors and talk about some people that we know that were all conservatives in the atheist movement, like David Silverman,
former president of American Atheists and really shitty libertarian,
who brought the Atheist Alliance to CPAC years ago. Peter Boghossian,
who was right next to James Lindsay and all this stuff.
James Lindsay and Peter Boghossian were tied at the hip for a while.
And that makes me angry because so he's a philosophy PhD, a philosophy professor, and he wrote a book that I really enjoyed, which was The Manual for Creating Atheists. I loved that book. It also sparked the street epistemology movement, which I also really enjoyed. And even though he never used it himself because he had his head so far up his own ass, it didn't matter. But it was so infuriating to see Peter Boghossian fall into the exact same tactics that he warned against in his own book that I really recommended to a ton of people.
Melissa Chen, that name probably not familiar to anyone listening to this, but definitely is to us. James Lindsay, Ron Lindsay.
Oh.
Faisal Syed El-Muhtar, another name that we know very well. Robert M. Price, a name that I know probably better than anyone.
And he was the biblical historian who went absolutely freaking crazy and went hard for Trump.
Huge Trump guy. Still is. Still does the Bible Geek. I know, I produce it. Gad Sad, Michael Sherlock, Michael Shermer,
which is who you were talking about before.
Yeah, editor of Skeptic magazine. So these people are all on the board of advisors for Atheists for Liberty. Very, like, it seems like they got all these people. They have all this money and funding to do all this. Their following, though, quite small. I want to just go to their YouTube page and just look at their videos. Have a few hundred views each. It's not very impressive. They've got 2,500 subscribers for 100 videos. They've been doing this for...
Well, let's look at some of these videos,
right.
too.
Yep, look at these video titles. This tells you what they're really about. Peter Boghossian on the Bud Light boycott. Does it matter?
Well, I saw another thing that said, like, religious freedom and how it even helps out atheists.
Yeah, that's great.
How the Freedom from Religion Foundation gone woke.
SJWs can't defend their ideas, and they know it. With Peter Boghossian, woke conversations are impossible.
Oh my God. Pro-trans, but with one major exception.
Another Peter Boghossian video. Atheism gone off the rails. Why did atheists become obsessed with social justice?
Oh my God.
Religion gives answers, but are they correct? Sweden's dark history with Nazi Germany. Ugh. The fall of diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. So all extremely, like, these are all videos that you would see on PragerU.
Absolutely.
Video titles.
I mean, for God's sakes, I'm looking through their website right now, and I literally found an article that just said, a libertarian Jesus? That's what Republicans argue for Jesus. Are you kidding me? That's what the Christian nationalist argument is. Like, it's all the same exact talking points. And again, it's so saddening to see that this was our community that we were a part of.
These were leaders. Michael Shermer and David Silverman, there were two at the very top of the atheist community.
So I'm just looking at a bunch of their stuff now.
Yeah.
They have merch coming soon, apparently.
I'll be on the lookout. Their first video was discussing Atheists for Liberty's public debut at CPAC 2020.
Gross.
How the woke movement ruined atheism with James Lindsay. Atheists for Liberty, vaccine mandate equality project.
How atheism is compatible with conservatism. The women's conference threw him out. He was canceled by the women's conference that he started.
Elon agrees. Traditional liberal views are now conservative. Classical liberal. Witnessing Antifa riots behind the scenes in Portland.
So, okay, I know I said my piece, but why do you think then all these people went this way?
I think to them, atheism was always just an intellectual exercise.
Sure.
And when they saw, like, humanism kind of take over as the most prominent political philosophy that came out of atheism, and you even had people like Richard Carrier, who is also a creep, pushing Atheism Plus, which is trying to embrace feminism and humanism into atheism.
Sure.
That was not compatible with their beliefs. I mean, these people are, as what they still are, is libertarians. And they did not like the way atheism was pushing left and skewing left. We saw it when the group we were in collapsed. It collapsed because the majority of the community was left-leaning and did not agree with all of the anti-woke, anti-feminism stuff that was being pushed out. And then you had that same thing play out in atheism as a whole. You had the people like the Amazing Atheist, the Armored Skeptic, all of those people push hard right. And again, it all happened around the Trump presidency. I think that's what galvanized all of this, because you had a segment that was like us saying, no, this is 100% against what we believe, and we have to do everything we can to stand against this. And then you had another side that did not agree and wanted to fight for their beliefs, and that caused this giant schism. And I think the same thing that pushed us to leave atheist activism and push toward political activism. So the entire reason we started this podcast is the entire reason there is Atheists for Liberty. At that same moment that everyone looked at each other and said, what are you talking about? You're wrong. We all decided religion wasn't the biggest question. It was politics. And we kind of chose different sides in that. So that's how I believe it went.
So I would just say, don't be a useful idiot. Be careful of people who are being useful idiots and being used to spread misinformation for the far right. That's going to be some of the most dangerous stuff that we have right now in our political discourse today, because these are people that will either don a liberal label or classical liberal label, or what do you want to say, an atheist label, a progressive label, and then also spew the exact same talking points that frickin' Donald Trump, Vivek Ramaswamy, Ron DeSantis are all parroting all the time.
I would take offense at them using the term progressive in that context.
I would too. Well, I'm sure they do. I've seen some pretty conservative people use the term progressive before. I'm like, you are not.
That's our word.
What?
Progressive.
Oh, just be vigilant, because there are going to be lots of people who will fall down this rabbit hole for very irrational means. And I'm not pretending that we are magically rational too. We're irrational too, because that's what humans are. But just be very careful and just be skeptical why people are suddenly dropping all of their morals and values for something else, and something that you probably know is very hateful and defamatory of other groups of people and just overall mean.
Yeah, sometimes your religious beliefs or lack thereof are not as important as how you want the world run. And I think that's really why I came away from the atheist movement, as I'm still an atheist, but I just don't think it's important to identify that way. I don't think it's important to have those discussions, because ultimately I don't care if someone believes or doesn't believe in any sort of supernatural, all-powerful being.
See, I'm a little bit different. I'm with you, where I don't really care about the religion discussions as much anymore, but I do care about identifying as an atheist. I want to be proud to say I am as such, more so like I'm not hiding who I am anymore. And granted, there's a lot of other personal reasons why I feel that way for me as well, but this was the one thing I probably ever did agree on with David Silverman, which was, don't be afraid to say atheist, because when we say atheist, we become visible. And then he said a bunch of other stupid shit, and I don't like it anymore. So...
And then he sexually assaulted some people.
You probably did it while he was saying it too. I'm not going to be honest. So I'm going to be honest there. So like, just be careful out there. Watch out for, I want to say grifters, but people who are willing to become useful idiots for people on the far right.
Yeah, there are also people like Dave Rubin who are just clearly, just they'll say whatever for $1, and they have no ideology. It's just all pushing for fame and money, which I think that claim can certainly be leveled at some other people we know. Right. But yeah, just, I don't know, take a bigger view of the world. Like, that's ultimately what I learned from being in the atheist movement and basically witnessing its downfall.
Yeah.
And it just showed to me that religion, or what my personal beliefs were just one piece of a larger puzzle, and there were other things that were important as well. And maybe that should also dictate the kinds of people that I would get along with, or basically find community with.
I think that's a good way of putting it. And since I don't know how to end this, we're going to cut it off here so Jason and I can watch some of these Atheists for Liberty videos. So have a good night.
I don't know about that, but obviously we're going to be off next week for Thanksgiving.
Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
We'll see you shortly after that.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively. Amai Eli, is it Eliyahu? Eliyahu. Oh my God. Amali Eli. Amali Eli.
I think it's Amahai.
Oh, it's Amah. Yeah, it is. I keep seeing L's there. Amahai Eliyahu.
NPR's Claudia Grisales in a hallway. Grisales.
Grisales.
Okay.